Welcome, friends, to the Dr. Pontificus podcast. I am your humble host, the eponymous Pontificus himself, overly emphatic voice of reason and compassion in this circus of chaos we affectionately call the American culture. Today's episode, who is the mysterious Pontificus and what is he about? All will be revealed. Enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first Dr. Pontificus podcast. So very, very exciting. First of all, we need to answer the very important question in this deep, dark, overgrown jungle of podcast information overload. Why in the crazy world should you listen to me? Well, first of all, I am an actual doctor. What am I a doctor of, you ask? Well, the history of ideas. Yes, that is indeed a thing. It's a humanities degree. So, what you may now be asking yourself is a degree in humanities good for? Well, let me tell you, it's not really good for making money, but money isn't everything. And that's one of the big points I want to make throughout this entire podcast. However, studying the humanities is very good for a lot of very important other things. It's good for making sense of stuff. It's broad. It's all-encompassing. It shows how everything is interconnected. It helps you understand the world better. Not only that, it helps you be a better person. And not only that, it helps make the world more humane, because the humanities is the study of how to be a better human. And what have I done with this so-called useless degree? All kinds of wonderful, wonderful things. I've explored the human condition, explored it working in lots of different jobs, through relationships, performance, theater, art, music, writing, travel. I have studied and understood the great works of literature, philosophy, science, history, psychology, sociology, all the ologies, and how they all fit together. A lifetime of learning over the course of 40 years plus, building a big, multifaceted crystal of knowledge in my mind of facts and ideas that all together actually make sense of this topsy-turvy world. And I have taught a lot. I have taught college students. I've taught high school students, middle school students. I've taught students with cognitive and physical disabilities. And through tens of thousands of hours as an educator, it turns out I actually have become really good at explaining things. So let me help explain things for you. I have even somehow taught my own children. Yes, and that's really, really important, because one of the great things I have done with my life is being a parent. I'm parenting right now. I have 3 children in my house, or rather emerging adults. 2 of them are my own, and I am doing my part to try to help them figure out how to be a functional adult in this crazy, cruel world. And that is no small feat, my friends. First of all, they, like most young folks these days, are looking at this world full of endless labor, soul-sucking debt, information overload, rampant materialism, hypersexualized, conflict-crazed, run by fanatics and bullies, and they're going, "Who the fuck let this happen?" No, thank you. So, it is my job as a parent to help them establish their sanity in an insane world, their well-being in a culture that is often sick and twisted. I need to help them have the skills and knowledge to navigate this asylum that is America, but more than that, to make sure they have heart, to make sure they possess a functioning moral compass, to maintain their sense of compassion, to care about others, to care about the whole society, and do good wherever they go, whatever they do in spite of it all. That's what it means to be a parent these days. Hell, that's what it means to be a teacher these days. That's what it means to be a person. And yes, the humanities have helped me do all this stuff. Not only has it helped me be a better human being, it has instilled in me a moral code that compels me to constantly try to improve and make the world better. The humanities is about how to be truly human. So, no, I'm not perfect. I'm not saying that. Yes, I'm really smart, very knowledgeable, and incredibly well educated. And I know that that sounds arrogant and elitist, but those are just facts. I know some things about some things. I may not be perfect, but I am worthy of your trust. I'm not in this to show off, but because I truly care and want to help. I am sane. I promise. I see things clearly. I am constantly learning and growing and testing my beliefs all along the way. And one of the whole points of being human is to learn and grow. Plus, I'm old. Now, listen. I know we live in a very youth-oriented culture, and when I was young, I really loved that. And of course, we know the big problem with old people is that they get conservative and stuck in their ways, and honestly, that's just two ways of saying the same thing, All right, I get it. But I don't really have those typical oldster problems. I'm very open-minded and deeply in favor of positive transformation of myself and the world around me. But when I was young, well, wonderful as it was, full confession, I was a complete mess. I made lots of horrible decisions, had problems with judgment and impulse control. I got into relationships for all the wrong reasons, often put my own needs ahead of others, prioritized pleasure seeking over well-being, and through a long, hard road of trial and error, eventually I stopped stumbling all over myself and finally kind of got it together. So, what I'm saying is, when it comes to being young, I've been there, I've done that, and I've come out the other side stronger, wiser, and deeper. Yeah. And so you can say what you will about my thoughts and ideas, but I have actually thought this through deeply. These are not half-baked ideas, they are fully baked. So let's talk. We live in an era of misinformation. So, to be clear about a very unclear topic, misinformation is information that sounds true even though it's not. Now, of course, some of this is an inevitable product of information overload. We have too much information, more than we know what to do with, more than we can process, coming from all kinds of sources everywhere all the time. And that is not necessarily a bad thing, it's just a lot. It's overwhelming, and it's genuinely difficult sometimes to figure out what's real and what's true. Now, some of this information is just coming from, plain incompetence. People thinking that they know what they're talking about when they actually don't. They haven't thought it through or done any research, and they just think they know what's going on. They haven't really tested their beliefs or used critical thinking skills, even though those skills are really not that hard to master. And part of it is just laziness, but also a lot of misinformation is due to the good old Dunning-Kruger effect, which states that people who know a little something about a topic completely overestimate their knowledge, have utterly unearned overconfidence in their command of the subject, and feel like they can school actual experts who have spent their whole lives mastering the subject at hand. So, it's people being ignorant of their own ignorance. It happens all the time. Again, stuff like critical thinking skills, the scientific method, and a decent education could cure all this, but here we are. Part of this misinformation, of course, is just the fact that we live in the age of exhibitionism. People are just addicted to expressing themselves, and everyone wants to sound like an expert on whatever it is that they are passionate about. And there is a lot of attention-seeking behavior in this opinion-saturated social media circus we have substituted for reality. And again, expression is not necessarily a bad thing unless you're trying to tell other people what to do and think, and then you better know what the hell you're talking about. Otherwise, you are pretending to be an authority without any actual qualifications and leading people astray. And whether you're aware of it or not is beside the point if your ideas are doing harm to our whole fucking culture. Ignorance is not bliss. Now, another kind of misinformation is intentional. We call that disinformation. And disinformation is usually coming from people who have a vested interest in bringing others around to their own way of thinking. Some of them are just they just simply get off on having followers, of being adored by an audience. It's just narcissism. They don't even believe what they are saying. And I'm not naming names. It happens all the time. You know this. Disinformation is ruling America right now. Maybe its purveyors can justify their manipulations by saying it's necessary to realize their worldview and defeat their enemies and get control of whatever is threatening them. And of course, disinformation is a well-used path to wealth, power, and fame. So the reason that I, Dr. Pontificus, started this podcast is that I have been monitoring all this disinformation for decades now. From the takeover of the AM talk radio waves to Fox News and the propagandist's best friend, the internet, watching how the American mind has been twisted and buried under such a sea of mis and disinformation that they've constructed an alt-right reality bubble impervious to, the truth. There are a lot of people who have been at war for a very long time with a particular set of ideas. And those ideas are liberalism, progressivism, any kind of leftist philosophy whatsoever. So I'm very confused about this. For example, liberalism really pisses a lot of people off. Why? I don't know. It's really not threatening. In fact, liberalism is a very, very moderate center-left political philosophy. So let's back up a bit. So what do we mean by left versus right, in case you don't know? Okay, so it's really pretty simple. Left means you are in favor of change, and right means you're in favor of the status quo, not change. All of this goes back to the French Revolution, when they were going into the assembly to decide whether they were going to overthrow the king. The people who wanted change in the French culture sat on the left of the assembly, and the people who wanted to keep things the same sat on the right, and that's where we get the political spectrum of left and right. Ta-da! Now, don't get me wrong. Something as complicated and complex as politics cannot be reduced to two simple directions. It's just not bipolar that way. It is simply a way for us to kind of reduce a very, very complicated thing to something that's a little bit more simple to visualize and easier to talk about, but you've got to be careful. Everyone is trying to oversimplify everything all the time, and that is part of why this podcast is necessary. So back to liberalism. If you had to take the whole political spectrum, bounded by the crazy extremes on both sides, then if you look in the middle, which would be moderate and just a little bit to the left of the middle, there you would find liberalism. Got it? Now, The more change you want in society, the further to the left you are. The more you want things to stay the same in the society, the further to the right you are, until, in fact, as you get really, really, really far to the right, not only do you want things to stay the same, you actually want them to go backwards to this other time when things were better for whatever reason. For example, if you want to, quote, make America great again, unquote, that means you want to take the culture back to a before time and erase whatever changes happened since then, like civil rights and stuff. So when was this great time exactly? Was it the 1950s, the 1850s? I don't know. Anyway, we call that reactionism. It's reacting to change, see? Now, on the super, super duper extremes, you have various forms of dictatorship. On the extreme right, you have fascism, which is exemplified by, of course, Hitler. On the extreme left, you have something like, say, communist totalitarianism, which is exemplified by, say, Stalin. Both of these things are very, very bad. In fact, they're the same kind of bad, oppressing people with outright violence and control. But don't use these concepts out of context, okay? We toss around terms like dictatorship and totalitarianism, and especially fascism, very, very loosely, usually just to demonize people we don't agree with. These are extreme, extreme things, and we use them in situations where they don't apply. For example, during the whole COVID pandemic, people were using the word fascism to describe mandatory masking in schools and businesses. Really? Are you insane? Oh, never mind. Anyway, don't use the word fascism unless it's actually going on. Thank you. All right, so what does liberalism as this moderate left-wing political philosophy actually believe? It's very simple. Liberalism believes in a balance between the interests of the individual and the interests of society. So, a balance between individualism and collectivism. Really, what's so bad about that? It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just right. Okay, a little change, not too much change. Don't want things to go backwards. We want everything to be okay. All right, and it only seems radical because everyone's telling you that it is. There's nothing radical about it. Believe me, I know, because I'm more radical than the liberals are, and I feel like they're kind of too moderate for me. So, to say that liberalism is extreme is really blowing the whole thing out of proportion, and that is disinformation on purpose deception of the American people in order to let right-wing extremism seem sane by comparison. And there's a reason for this. Our political system here in America is completely unbalanced. We have effectively silenced half of the political spectrum, and that half is everything to the left of liberalism, including, of course, Dr. Pontificus. And so that means our center here in America lands squarely in conservative world, which makes radical right-wing political philosophies like, say, libertarianism and religious fundamentalism seem relatively tame, whereas actual left-wing political philosophies like, say, democratic socialism seem completely outside of conceivable thought, right? And that's because we are the victims of outright, long-term political manipulation. So listen, despite the fact that liberalism is a moderate political philosophy, everyone on the rabbit right continually says that it's something that you have to fight, that you have to silence, that it's taking over the world, it's taking over a political system, it's going to corrupt the hearts and minds of your children and make them all trans or gay or communist or Muslim or whatever group we're hating on this week. That liberalism, mamby-pamby milquetoast liberalism, is destroying America, indoctrinating the youth with the triple threat of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Oh my God, it's so ridiculous. Because if the left had its way, which would be great if the left actually had any kind of influence or control, here's what we would see. Here's the kind of America we would have. We would have less racism, less sexism, less discrimination of any kind across the board. You would see less homelessness or other signs of poverty. You would see a smaller gap between the rich and poor. You would see a better education system that is fully funded, that has working infrastructure, where college students aren't drowning in student debt, where teachers aren't overworked, underpaid, undervalued, and politically oppressed. Oh, and don't even get me started on healthcare, where people wouldn't go broke because they get sick. And on top of that, you would have less conflict in general, and none of that is happening in America because liberal and progressive ideals have been silenced, demonized, and sometimes outlawed entirely, marginalized out of existence, while at the same time, the right saying that the left is this constant threat destroying the American way. It is a complete fantasy. So, how does the left bestow all of these blessings upon societies where it actually has influence and a voice? Here's how. Because the left believes in diversity as a fundamental principle, and guess what? That includes political diversity, and guess what? That means the left actually tolerates and believes that conservatives should have a voice in society. See, we're really nice. Too bad conservatives don't return the favor. Let's face it, I have been around conservatives my entire life. I grew up in a small conservative town. I'm surrounded by conservatives now. I'm in the middle of the Midwest. They're everywhere. Conservatives dominate my world. They are trying to take over the school system I work in. They are my coworkers, my supervisors, sometimes my students. I know this world well. And I'm not going to do what they do and make up some kind of strawman caricature of conservatives like they do with liberals. I'm going to tell it like it is, and right now, it's not pretty. Not right now. Here's what I know they want. Conservatives want to live in a world where only conservatives have power and a voice. They want everything to be like them. They want one true religion, one true political ideology, one true ethnicity, one true model of genders, one true model of gender relationships, one true model for what it means to be American. They want to set the standard for how everyone should be, what they should believe in, who they should be. And because of this, they are not tolerant of opposition at all. And that means they are not tolerant of difference. And that means they are not tolerant of change. All difference, all change needs to be silenced through legislation, through censorship, through ridicule, through every kind of social control there is. And conservatives have had a strong history of violence toward whoever they feel threatened by, whether those threats are real or not. And they are highly organized from the grassroots to the skyscrapers to the Pentagon, all one solid front of fear and hatred. All right, listen, folks, this is nothing new. Conservatives have always been like this from time immemorial. They've always wanted to be in control of society because it makes them feel secure. And this includes the rich and powerful who have vested interest in keeping things the same because, obviously, they are profiting from the status quo. And this is why the rich are usually very conservative. But most of your run-of-the-mill conservatives, they really just want stability and security. So stability is not a bad thing. We all need some stability. Things don't need to get too crazy so that it becomes really dangerous. Nobody wants that. But too much stability means stagnation for everyone and oppression for many. And that is the problem with conservatives. They are willing to control people's beliefs and values and expression just to avoid their own fear of insecurity. Yes, that sounds very, 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 very depressing. However, don't worry, there's hope. So let's shift from talking about liberalism and why it's so not extreme and talk about the progressive movement, which includes a big chunk of the political left. First of all, let me assure you the big progressive agenda isn't dangerous to me or you or to America. In fact, it's a better way of life. We progressives offer a way of life that is actually suited to the world the way it is now. We're moving forward, progressing to a world where people suffer less and care about each other more. We're not trying to fight everything that's different and crawl up inside a little hole where everyone looks the same and believes the same things. Oh my God, how boring. And not only is it boring, it's also damaging. Conservatism leaves a lot of people out who feel like they are unwanted and do not belong. And sometimes conservatism is violently oppressive to people that don't share their worldview. Instead, we progressives offer health and happiness. Yes, those are actually things, and they can be defined, and they can be implemented to make a better society. So, of course, I, Dr. Pontificus, will elaborate on all of this in future episodes. We'll talk about religion and politics and sex and violence and culture and maybe the whole development of the modern world, how the rabid right took over America and what we can do about it. We'll discuss toxic individualism, the tyranny of the alphas, and the culture of cruelty that oppresses all of us, even the oppressors themselves. You know, all the stuff you have to avoid speaking about during Thanksgiving dinner. Listen, I, Dr. Pontificus, know this is a tough, scary time to be progressive in America. But here's the thing. Our way is true, demonstrably, invariably true. And I can prove it through compassion and reason. Trust me, I'm a doctor, Dr. Pontificus. I know these are dark times, but don't lose the one thing that makes our path stronger than theirs: our big, bright, progressive hearts. We know how to be human in a more humane world. And if we, as a civilization, as a species, as a planet, want to survive and thrive, we will have to learn to embrace our differences, learn to share with each other, learn to care for one another, and find our common humanity at last. It's not that hard. This is the way. This is the way forward.
Take me to the fair. Hit me, Audie!
And that's it for now, folks. I, the eponymous Pontificus, thank you for your kind attention. The Dr. Pontificus podcast comes to you from the deep, dark heart of the American Midwest. Our theme music is by the Great Orange Mothers, awesome Austin band from ages of yore. Until next time, fight the good fight, but don't be a hater. And remember, friends, please don't feed the alphas. Dr. Pontificus bids you good day.